Know what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of In the Box, episode 25, the quarter century. Babiak, how are we doing? We got a lot to talk about.
I'm excited. I'm a little bit sad. This is our last episode in this studio. Yes, all you commenters, we do this in the same studio. We're in a room together here.
Yeah, we've had that before. People be like, oh, like that's impressive that you recreate that. We would just be looking at if we did this like remote, we would not be going through all these lengths. We do it in person. And moving. We got we're gonna have to establish a new studio. Might be some virtual shows until we kind of establish that. But let's talk about the hockey. You don't give a shit about the move out. And we have a metric shit ton to talk about. Lou Lamoriello clearly fired. Laviolette fired, but Chris Drury got a multi-year extension. Blysma out in Seattle. I think I'm pronouncing that correct. Maybe. I don't know. I'm probably going to get roasted in the comments. Francis gets promoted. Botterill, the former Sabres general manager, gets promoted to GM. Greg Cronin out in Anaheim. And then we're just going to talk about the playoffs. And then at the end, we got a Cole Hutson interview. He was lucky enough to talk to me for like 10 to 12 minutes.
He was lucky enough to talk to you.
I was lucky enough to talk to him. We're recording this early, like 10 a.m. I'm not on top of my game. But Cole Hutson I was lucky enough to interview Cole Hutson. Thankfully. Yeah, I think people are really going to find out about Cole Hutson after he comes on our podcast. But let's get into it. Let's get serious. Lou Lamoriello has been let go by the New York Islanders. Not technically fired. They just did not renew his contract. They're moving on. I'll let you go first, because I made a full YouTube video on it. I assume if you watch the podcast, you probably listen to some of that. I'll let you go first, and we'll work off it.
All right.
You can be lucky enough to go first on this topic.
Lou, his net tenure, more good than bad. I think most Islanders fans would agree with that. I also think most Islanders fans would agree the time to move on from him was a year and a half ago, maybe. Whoever inherits the Islanders is going to be in a really tough spot, right? Because the team as it is right now is very old, very low on tradable contracts, and not very good. Even in the context of this year's pretty weak Eastern Conference race, the Islanders found themselves out of it much earlier than a team like the Rangers, who I believe has serious bounce back potential with their on paper talent. They were out earlier than Columbus, who is much younger than the Islanders and who I would expect to be better in the future. The Islanders, really, I see one obvious tradable piece in Noah Dobson, and I do think changing GM makes it more likely that Dobson ends up traded. Otherwise, I think a rebuild is the overall direction that is needed. I don't really see how that gets accomplished short term because you have so few tradable assets.
I think Bo Horvat, well, first off, we'll just talk about it in terms of the actual job. I think it is somewhat attractive just because I think ownership knows it's going to take a while. It's not one of these things where like you're going to have to retool on the fly, get this team back in the playoffs in 2 years. And if you don't, you're going to be fired. I think whoever's going to get this job is going to have like a full 4 to 5 years. And because of what Lamoriello did in the last year, because again, first 3 years, great. Then 2 years, pretty horrendous, 2022, 2023. Last year, kind of mediocre. But then the last 10 months, getting Yzerman, getting Ritchie, moving off Brock Nelson, picking up a first-round pick, it's definitely a much more desirable job than this time last year. This time last year, I wouldn't have wished it upon my worst enemy. But I think that there is something to be desired with this job. I think the culture that Lou set is pretty solid, and I think that the expectations are rather low. As we talked about before, Lou Lamoriello just within Romanov and the Horvat trade kind of just sent this team into pure mediocrity. But I think with ownership trusting the next guy, I think they can retool, rebuild, but it will be a process. Bo Horvat, I think, could potentially get traded. It's tough because I think he probably is like the next captain of this team once Anders Lee's out. But 8.5 is a little bit of a serious contract. With the salary cap is going up. We talk about that a lot. But I think teams would be interested in him, considering how much of a seller's market we saw at this year's trade deadline. A team like the Montreal Canadiens, if they want to take a serious step, I've seen their fans even be very interested in that because they have nothing at second line center. Are they going to wait on Michael Hage to potentially pan out? I think he could actually get traded for a first and a decent prospect. Maybe you would have to eat $500K, $1 million, get it to 8, 7.5, and it becomes a lot more appetizing. But yeah, I think that it's exciting times for the Islanders. Where kind of for the last 3 to 4 years, it's just been agony and dreading, and looking forward to the day that Lou Lamoriello is finally gone.
Yeah, it's Lou's, historically had a great career, but frankly, in the salary cap era, it seems like he's always struggled to adjust. Because I do want to emphasize these problems with the Islanders, where he's not great at managing the salary cap and where he insists on signing mediocre veterans and old school players for long-term contracts. Those weren't brand new problems with the Islanders. Those problems existed towards the end of his era with the Devils. Obviously, his Devils era was fantastic, and that continued into making a Stanley Cup Finals run in the salary cap era.
But the decade after,
after
that was one playoff appearance or something.
Period of time in Toronto was marred by the exact same issues of taking mediocre bottom six physical players that would have been seen as pretty valuable in the 90s and give them long-term contracts. I mean, how much money did Leo Komarov make across 2 different cities because Lou Lamoriello couldn't adjust to the modern way that hockey is played?
Yeah, he pried Matt Martin out of Long Island. But yeah, Lou Lamoriello, I feel like he's getting kind of a short end of a stick just because it has been so bad of late and he has made so many questionable decisions. As you mentioned before, it's still such a positive for the Islanders when looking at the fact that from 1992 or 93 to 2016, they didn't win a single playoff series. So he elevated the franchise to respectability. Again, they're not some world-class organization. I'm not going to say like every general manager is going to be fighting for this job. Well, it's the only job right now available, so maybe they will. But I think it is going to be desirable in terms of guys that I'm looking for. I'm looking for some kind of like young up-and-coming assistant general manager. Someone like Brendan Pridham in Toronto. I forget the guy in Tampa. Just someone that has learned under a great general manager, especially looking at the guy in Tampa, and can come in and really just have his vision for the next 5 to 10 years. I hate the rumors about Mark Bergevin potentially being involved. The Athletic floated Jarmo Kakalainen. They should not go down the route of just experience after going with the guy that had the most experience in the NHL and Lou Lamoriello. I think considering Lou Lamoriello inherited it and it was obvious that they still had solid pieces. They had rookie Matt Barzal who had 85 points and was looking like a future superstar. This is clearly not that. This is clearly you're going to have to trade some pieces, move guys around, and think to the future. And I want someone young that can grow into the job to do that. What do you think?
I agree with you fully there. We talk about recycling coaches because that's the main thing you see. Sometimes the GMs also get recycled, which in some cases, can be fine, can work out. But the names available on the open market right now, Jarmo, Bergevin, those guys were fired for a reason. They were pretty bad at their job for a few years leading up to being terminated. So I don't see any reason why you would trust them over someone younger, someone who's been growing in the wings and has the chance to really build a team for the first time, because we've seen what Jarmo building a team looks like. It doesn't look very good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you go young general manager. I wouldn't hate if they're going to move off Patty Waugh. I wouldn't hate getting more of an established coach. Not a hard ass like John Tortorella or something like that, but if you are going to go with the guy that doesn't have general manager experience, you maybe go with more of an experienced head coach, or Jay Woodcroft. I would also love that. I don't think you go completely fresh in both regards. Not saying that would like ruin any future that the team has, but I do like the idea of more experienced guy coaching the team and has kind of set his standard, and a younger guy. Do you agree with that or not?
I also agree with you there. The current Islanders roster doesn't really have any like young future core pieces that you're trying to develop in real time. So I don't see the point in getting any kind of a development coach. I think that a stabilizer is probably for the best.
Yeah. A year or two guy, not going to be the coach for the next half decade once Yzerman and Ritchie really start to make a difference. I think for the Islanders, they're definitely going to need draft luck, even if they do trade Dobson and Horvat even. I don't think they're going to be a bottom 3 team or bottom 5 team next season. So, like, it's going to take luck, but I think they definitely need to commit to being like a 75 to 80 point team the next 2 years, probably, where there are potential franchise superstar near generational talents.
Yeah, I mean, it's historically, when you look at the teams at the very bottom of the standings, the common thread is their goaltending situation is all awful. The Islanders goalie situation is really pretty good right now, which is good if you're trying to win games and build a team, but it does put a pretty high floor on you. I don't see how the Islanders can possibly end up worse than San Jose or Chicago, Philadelphia over the next season or two, because Sorokin's going to give them a very solid floor.
Yeah, and I don't think you move off Sorokin. His value isn't like that high. And as we talked about before, goalies can play at a very high level in their early 30s, maybe even in their mid 30s. I think he could still be the guy or potentially shepherd in the next guy come 2028, 2029. But just overall, I think the resounding reaction to this is elation from New York Islanders fans. I think that the fans clearly spoke this season when looking at the attendance fell like 1,000, 2,000 a game. And although I think that they might be worse next season, I think having Cal Ritchie, Yzerman, I think he's going to go back to Boston University, but going hopefully younger this offseason, I think will rejuvenate this franchise that has just been so stagnant and fan base that has been so disappointed the last couple of years.
I want to be optimistic on that, but I do still think they're like a full year or maybe 2 years away from even being in like the current Sharks Ducks range of like they're bad, definitely. But at least they're young and fun. Like they just do not have the pieces to be that right now.
Next year is going to be really rough, but I just want a vision. Lou Lamoriello had no vision of late. He just continued to double down and continued to trade assets. And again, shout out to him. Like, he didn't know if he was going to be returning, and he decided to trade Brock Nelson for a first in Cal Ritchie when he could have done something completely irrational to try to make the wild card and then lose in like 5 games. So yeah, Lou Lamoriello, thank you for your service. You gave me probably, without a doubt, I'm a Hornets, Jets, Mets, and Islanders fan. You gave me the best 3-year run, sports-wise, of my entire life, which isn't saying much. They didn't even make a Stanley Cup final. But yeah, net positive that I feel like people are just a little bit too down on because they don't realize how bad the Islanders were before him and how much of a mess.
The Garth Snow era was rough for you guys. It sure was.
We're gonna
the
move
new
on.
Heads might not appreciate how bad that was.
Yes, and Milbury before that. Next up, we're sticking in New York. One team decided to move off their general manager that was kind of spiraling, and the other decided to keep them. Chris Drury signs an extension. Actually, we're going to start with Laviolette. Laviolette fired. I don't have like any strong take on this. The team was god-awful defensively, and the defense score is like average to below average, but they were bottom 5 across the board in basically every single advanced stats. Expected goals against per 60 in terms of high danger chances. They had they gave up the 4th most this season. Medium danger chances the 2nd most. They couldn't beat out a 91-point Canadiens team for a last wild card. It's not like there was this great teams in the East. Even getting JT Miller with 35 games to go, they couldn't get that done. It's unacceptable. It's absolutely unacceptable what they were on the ice this season. Even with all the changes, they should have at least been a 92, 93-point team. And yeah, Laviolette, you see it early on in his tenures, and that's the case with a lot of coaches, but like they usually tend to peak in the first or second year, far exceed expectations, and then it just falls off a decent amount. It happened with the Washington Capitals to a degree. That's kind of his MO. He introduces his system, teams quickly figure it out, and that happened with the New York Rangers this year.
This is going to be an extreme oversimplification of the Rangers season. But, you know, at the beginning of the season, did you look at this roster on paper and figure they should be in the playoffs? Mm-hmm. You did, right? I know I did.
106 points or something like that.
So if the widespread consensus in October was this roster is good enough to make the playoffs, in theory, that means the GM did his job okay enough. And the fact that they didn't make the playoffs has to fall on either the players or the coach. You know, probably it falls more on the veteran players not producing, but those veteran players have big contracts that are going to be difficult to get rid of. So it does totally make sense to me that the sword will fall on the coach. There's a bajillion other factors in here. You know, should Drury be allowed to hire his 3rd coach in 4 seasons? Maybe not, but the fact is the Rangers, in theory, had the personnel to make the playoffs this year. They didn't make the playoffs this year. Whose fault is it that you can't get decent production out of players who were pretty good 2 years ago? I think blaming Laviolette's fair enough.
Yeah, I think I do blame Drury just because a lot of the locker room problems and just constant roster changes throughout the season is because of him. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's just unacceptable. And Laviolette does have to control his locker room to a degree. I remember, was it like the third to last game of the season? He's like, I'm not even going to go into that locker room and talk to them. Like, he had clearly lost the room. Chris Drury, though, his just fumbling of this, I don't really care about the Barkley Gaudreau stuff that the players were apparently mad at. He sucks. He made $3.6 million. They need to get over that. But I do think going into the season with Jacob Trouba, not getting that sorted out and then having this public 2 to 3 day stretch of like, is he going to be on the team? Is he not going to be on the team with your captain? That's unacceptable for Chris Drury. Obviously moves off Capo Caco after, and you can blame Laviolette for this, not playing him enough. He goes on to kill it. Drury brings in Will Borgen and then gives him a 5-year deal. Drury doubles down on this team, gives up. They're probably going to give up the 11th overall pick for JT Miller. And JT Miller's still a very good player, but I'd rather have that 11th overall pick from the New York Rangers that are so far away. So in terms of Drury, I think that that's arguably more egregious just because he's been around for longer. And there were clear 5-on-5 problems with this team this summer, and all he did was get rid of Gaudreau because he's buddies with Mike Riera, but bring in Riley Smith, and that clearly wasn't going to fix some of their guys like Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider that were so power play reliant. So if I was doing a blame pie, I'd do Drury 63%, Laviolette 37%. What do you think?
I'm less harsh on Drury, I guess. I mean, it's tough to say that he's made lots of good moves. For the most part, all of his good moves have been him undoing mistakes, and he hasn't really been able to add significant pieces to complement this core. That said, JT Miller, he got a distressed asset who's a very good player. JT Miller played fantastic in New York. He did. Whatever bug hit Zibanejad and Kreider to make them ineffective players did not affect JT Miller. Miller was over a point a game in New York.
Yeah, let me actually change that to blame pie, because you got to include the players in this at the end of the day. They just didn't show up. I blame the players far more than either of these two guys. Guys like Zibanejad and Kreider falling off a cliff and just looking completely disengaged at times, if we're going to be honest. Defense core guys like Ryan Lindgren falling off a cliff, but he did kind of start to fall off last year. So yeah, it definitely falls on the players first, but I think Chris Drury just being happy with this team that was the President's Trophy winners last year, don't get me wrong, but we saw in the playoffs, if Shesterkin doesn't have a 930 during that run, they probably lose in the second round pretty handily to the Carolina Hurricanes. So I think in terms of that, I just think it's ridiculous that they're bringing back Drury. I think that they're in a better spot, as we talked about, than the Islanders, because they do have a franchise goalie, a top 5 goalie, top 5 defenseman still, in my opinion, in Adam Fox. But that forward core, sorting that out this summer with the amount of no movement clauses that they have, that's going to be really tough. Could they potentially move off Chris Kreider, their longest tenured guy? What would they even get for him? Or what would they have to give up just to attach to dump him? I have absolutely no clue, and it's going to be a really tough job. I just don't trust Chris Drury to do that job. A lot of misses on his track record.
Yeah, it's like we've been over this a few times, I think. The Rangers are just in this bizarre spot where they have two completely different age cores that don't mesh at all.
But the young core isn't even that good now.
That's the thing. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The old core at this
ago,
point
yeah.
of Panarin, Zibanejad, Kreider, Miller, most of those guys are clearly starting to show signs of aging, which is a problem for them because the young guys are not really that good and not developing fast enough to cover for the old guys. You do have a franchise defenseman, you do have a franchise goalie. Outside of that, where is the production coming from? Lafreniere hasn't really had that breakout yet.
Half a point per game after he signed his extension.
As of 3 years ago, this team felt like they had a billion very hyped young defensemen. Oh, we have Keandre Miller, Braden Schneider, Zach Jones, Nils Lundqvist. I don't think you're going to end up with a single solid top 4 guy out of that group.
Yeah.
Whose fault is that? Is that on drafting? Is that on player development? Is that on coaching? I can't say from the outside, but there's a very clear trend that the Rangers have not actually been able to get production out of their own highly regarded prospects.
Yeah, and even with Gabriel Perreault, they sat him out 2 out of his 5 games. They're not even giving him an opportunity to potentially grow. And looking at them this summer, I have the numbers here. they only have like $10 million to re-sign Will Cooley, who's probably, if you want to go any long term on that, it's going to be north of $4.5 million, $5 mil. Miller, if you want to go long term, that's probably going to be $6 million. You probably have to bridge him. So, and they also have roster spots on top of that. It's because Drury brought in guys like Borgen, then gave him $4.1 million. Carson Soucy has another year at 3.25. He was awful this year. For some reason, re-signed Urho Venkanainen. It's only like $1.55 million. But like, they don't even have flexibility because of those Shesterkin extensions, which I'm fine with that one. He is, when he's on, he's on. In the Lafreniere one, like there's not even mobility for this team to improve compared to this time. Like 3 to 4 months ago, we thought, oh, they're gonna have a lot of salary cap coming up. He spent it. He's basically spent it. So they're gonna be running back the exact team with all those forwards getting a year younger, and Shesterkin making $6.5 million more, and Lafreniere making $5 million. So like, they're just in a brutal spot. Like, I don't want to say that my Islanders are in a better spot because I think the next 2 to 3 years are going to be really rough. But if we're talking about potentially winning a Stanley Cup in a decade or something like that, I think the Islanders going down this path is far better. I forget what podcast I was listening to, like talking about the Bruins versus the Rangers, and I think the same's there. Bruins are going to stink for 2 to 3 years, but at least they committed to it at the deadline. Meanwhile, the Rangers traded their 11th overall pick for, and by the way, with that, how it goes, it's top 13 protected, but it's not like protected in the sense it guaranteed goes to Pittsburgh. They're going to have the option. And if I were them, I wouldn't risk taking it into 2026 unprotected. So just give up the 11th. So yeah, they have a bad prospect pool. A lot of their young guys have not taken steps and took steps back in Miller and Lafreniere. It's a rough situation, and I think even Ranger fans are now willing to admit that compared to me maybe 3 to 4 months ago, ringing the alarm bell, and people are like, you just hate the Rangers. Like, after they traded JT Miller, I was like, this isn't going to fix shit. And people are like, what are you talking about? Like, they're bringing in a stud. That wasn't their main problem then, not their main problem now, and they're not going to have any flexibility to potentially improve that defense core.
Yeah, I think the most likely thing they'll do, and I wouldn't even blame Drury for this, it seems rational to me, is just hope you can get a better coach in, and hope running back the same team will get you into the playoffs, which is possible. You can get into the playoffs if you find the right coach to remotivate Kreider and Zibanejad, get them back on top of their game.
I'm just not sure, like, not saying the top 3 in the Metro is locked up, but if the New Jersey Devils can stay healthy and make some tweaks this offseason, they're definitely not going to be better than Carolina in the regular season. Washington, I think we're expecting a step back, but relative to 100 and whatever, like 12 points that they had this season, I think we can say that they're going to be around the 100-point team. Columbus, just the internal growth probably should pass the New York Rangers, even if this year was a little bit outperforming. But yeah, it's a tough spot. Still a team I wouldn't want to play in the playoffs just because they have Igor Shesterkin. But it's bad, man. It's bad when looking at their future. And we didn't even talk about it because Panarin's still an extremely elite player. And I'm not saying I was expecting 120 points this season, like last year, and 49 goals. But even he went to only like 89 points, and his goals fell off a decent amount. It's like even their one superstar isn't quite a top 20 player in the NHL anymore. Their one superstar forward, that is.
No, I mean, he's got 1 year left on his contract, I believe, right?
That's going to be interesting.
I don't think you can do anything except ride that out and then free up the money next summer. Not to re-dive into it, but the stories around Panarin make me think his trade value, like within the next month before the draft, is non-existent. You're not going to be able to get rid of him right now.
Yeah.
At the deadline, maybe. Right now, I don't see a path.
That would be interesting. Yeah, come deadline time if Artemi Panarin's on the market. Okay, we're going to move on to something I think we'll be in full unison on. That is the situation going on in Seattle. Dan Bylsma fired after 1 season. I'm not going to defend the coaching job that he did, but a 76-point season with the roster that they had, you can't really expect much from a roster that has Jared McCann as your best forward, Vince Dunn as your best defenseman. Joey Daccord did show that he is a legit starter in the NHL. But yeah, this is just a painfully average roster. And for some reason, and with some horrible contracts on the books, signed by Ron Francis, and he got extended. Botterill got the promotion. He was the former assistant general manager. Under Ron Francis, they had 60 points in their first season. Expansion team, understandable. Then they had that 100-point season where it was kind of fugazi. I think they led the NHL in goals scored above expected by a decent margin. 81 points last year, 76 points this year. They were kind of fooled by that first season, and that second season. That's the only reason why Ron Francis is getting an extension. It's bad in Seattle, and I cannot believe that they doubled down. I guess ownership just really likes Ron Francis, but I have no hope for this team going forward. I like some of their young guys. I like Berkeley Cat in the prospect pool. I don't even think that they're like a Misa and Schaefer away from potentially turning this around in terms of getting a true blue chip. Like there is so much work that has to be done. And Ron Francis went for it this offseason. The Montour contracts, okay, right now, going to be horrible in 2 to 3 years. Stevenson, although the point totals were there, we've talked about it before, some of the worst analytics in the entire NHL. Like they are truly directionalists. We talk about the Rangers. We think that there's maybe turnaround if they could do something crazy because they have the pieces. My Islanders entering that rebuild, retool. This team is now like the poster child for no man's land and just where you don't want to be for a franchise.
Agreed. I think anyone who had playoff expectations at the beginning of the year was deluding themselves. I don't hold that against
like
coaching
a
at all.
90-point team. Like I didn't have them in the playoffs, but like they could have been okay.
The thing about Dan Bylsma is I do rate him as a development coach. When he was in Pittsburgh, starting out in Pittsburgh, it wasn't just like the guy to get them over the hill in the playoffs, which he ended up being. But at the time he took over, every single one of Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Jordan Staal was under 23 years old. So if I'm not expecting a playoff team and I'm hoping just for like a solid coach to develop young talent, I'd be happy to keep him around for 2 years, 3 years. Matty Beniers had a junior plateau after a sophomore slump. That's kind of concerning. But on the flip side, Shane Wright showed real signs of development this year. Capo Caco, for the first time in his life, showed signs of development, right? You finally found the first NHL coach who figured out how to use Capo Caco and get real production out of him. So the coaching seemed fine to me. I think, just lower expectations on winning and value the development and growth. And you could have kept him around for another 3 years, 4 years. Fully agree on Ron Francis. I did like his in-season selling trades as a direction towards getting younger. The free agent signings, completely awful in obvious ways. You really don't even need to pull numbers as evidence of them being awful. Seattle fans were the ones who had to watch Chandler Stevenson as their supposed one of their best players all year. And agreed too on this farm system. You have exactly one prospect who I rate highly, and I'm not even sure that Berkeley Catton counts as a true blue chip, but like he's the only one who's even remotely in the discussion for it. And that's really concerning when you're a bad team who's maybe not going to have top picks in the next few years.
Yeah, they have nothing in terms of defenseman prospects, too, and their defense core is old as shit right now. I like Riker Evans. He showed some promise this season, but as you're talking about, like, in season, he honestly killed it. Like, I'm not gonna shit on him for that. Getting Capo Caco for your number 6 defenseman and a 3rd and a 6th round pick, 2 first-round picks, and a 2nd round pick for Yanni Gord and Bjorkstrand, who weren't a part of your core. But I just don't think that you should get an extension after you went so aggressive in the offseason. If he thought about the future this last offseason and then did this and was thinking about some kind of retool, although it's ridiculous to think that he's already retooling in year 4 of its existence, but I at least could have been sold on that. But I think if you're going to do those Stevenson and Montour deals, 2 guys that were 30 years old, sign them to 7-year deals, then you don't get the adjust on the fly. Now we're thinking more about the future. Keep me for another 3 to 4 years and see this vision all the way through. He messed up the expansion draft compared to Vegas. Maybe teams were more not willing to give up the picks to protect guys like before, but he did basically nothing in terms of loading up on assets to potentially pick other guys, and he did have some good expansion picks, but did not kill it by any stretch. It's just been such an underwhelming tenure, and yeah, I just cannot believe that he is staying. Dan Bylsma is definitely a sacrificial lamb that, like, they had to do something. Ownership wanted some kind of head and some kind of change, but I don't know what coach would be frothing at the mouth to potentially take this job. It screams like just another retread head coach is probably going to get hired there, that they can sell to ownership that, like, half a decade ago he was coaching a very good team to a lot of success. It's just brutal. It is absolutely brutal. Yes, that second season they needed it in terms of drumming up fan support and national support for their brand, but it's kind of like the worst thing that in terms of the next decade that happened to this team, because it convinced ownership that Ron Francis was a good owner and that this core was a couple pieces away from actually contending, when it's the exact opposite. And it's tough to tear it down in like the 5th year of an existence, but that's probably the route that I would go at this point.
Yeah, I agree with that. The one thing I will say in Seattle's favor is that they do, unlike the Islanders and Rangers to me, their old core is at least tradable contracts. It's not guys who are so old and so highly paid that I can't see anyone wanting them. Adam Larson probably has quite a lot of trade value, I would think.
He has 4 years, I think, at like 5.25 after.
I would
this.
take that. He put up surprisingly good numbers
good
this year. And if the playoffs have shown anything, it's that having like a good shutdown D-man for your second pair is very valuable. Jordan Eberle, probably tradable, I would think. He's only got a couple years left.
Yeah.
If they would want to go full teardown, Jared McCann would be one of the most interesting names available on the market. So I do see relatively more of a way out. Like if you want to just blow up the whole team and go full rebuild, they do feel more able to do that than the Islanders or Rangers.
If they fired Ron Francis, I would agree with that. I think that is a potential vision if they were bringing in a new guy. And if I was that general manager, I'd look at that. But I think bringing back Ron Francis, I think he's going to say, okay, we did a little bit of a retool with the Bjork Strand in the Gord deal. That's obviously not enough to potentially get this team over the hump. But I do not see him admitting that, some of these guys that I gave contracts, I'm ready to trade and just completely retool it and tear it down. So, yeah, I just think that they're going to be a completely mediocre team. In the Pacific, you don't see Edmonton really going anywhere. LA should be highly competitive. Vegas might fall off soon. But then you got a team we're going to talk about very soon, the Anaheim Ducks coming up. You got San Jose. Like, they are just seemingly stapled to that 6th or 7th spot in the Pacific Division for the next half decade. I don't think that's controversial.
No, it's tough. It feels directionless, and it's maybe the kind of organization where there's ownership pressure to not do a real rebuild.
Yeah.
Like we need to pretend to be competitive so we have something to sell to the fans. It's a tough situation. Yeah. I wouldn't want to be involved in trying to fix that as a coach.
No, it's bad. We're going to stick in the Pacific Division with Greg Cronin getting fired by the Anaheim Ducks. I've shared my thoughts a little bit on this. Makes perfect sense. The team improved by 21 points because their goaltending tandem went from negative 15 goals saved over expected last year to plus 30. So like they won games solely off their goaltending this season. When looking at the young core, the number one guy is clearly Trevor Zegras, a fun, exciting, up-and-coming player, back-to-back 60-point seasons when he wasn't playing for Cronin. And although he did deal with injuries with his 2 years under Cronin, 47 points in 88 games, and just looked distraught out there. It looked like he didn't, not that he didn't give a shit, but like just looked depressed, if I'm going to be honest, whenever I watched him. Pavel Mintyukov, after having a really exciting rookie year, 28 points in 63 games, 19 in 68 this year. McTavish and Carlson, again, still very high on them going forward under a new coach, but completely plateaued the last 2 years. McTavish the last 2 years, Carlson his first 2 years. And there's like crazy stories about him. Spitting Chicklets said that he was a complete hard ass, made guys hate playing hockey. And a story from Keith Yandel when he was 17 years old from Spitting Chicklets, and he called Northeastern. Cronin was the coach at the time. He said, I'm not going to go to Northeastern. I'm going to go somewhere else. And basically, Cronin cursed him out and said you're never going to become anything to a 17-year-old Keith Yandel. Feel free to go look up that clip. It's funny as hell just how crazy this guy is. He's an old school coach. Maybe he'd win some Stanley Cups back in the 1980s, but it was just a horrible hire at the time by Pat Verbeek, and it's panned out exactly like we maybe expected. Maybe he fits as a hard-ass assistant to his staff, but as the head guy, unless you have a core of 28 to 35-year-olds, that shit just ain't gonna fly nowadays, especially in an LA area, Anaheim. No dice, and I love this firing, and they should bring in someone young and exciting to Anaheim.
Agree again on all points. We're doing a lot of agreeing today. Basically, all of their young talent plateaued this year. That's true. I've also heard from all secondhand media reports he's a real hard-ass coach in a way that's the exact opposite of what you want for young player development. Anaheim was 30th in the league in goals this year, which makes no sense given their young, exciting forward talent. There is no reason for them to have scored less than Philadelphia and Chicago this year. You have McTavish, Carlson, Gauthier, Zegras. It doesn't make any sense. Clearly, Cronin was the wrong coach for this team. He might be the wrong coach for any team, but he's certainly the wrong coach for a team where every single player worth caring about is an under 23 guy still trying to find their footing in the league. You're absolutely right about Trevor Zegras' regression. It's clear, it's obvious. It seems like it's not a skills thing. It's more of a mentality thing of just not having fun out there. And I fully agree, too. The Ducks, more than anyone else in the league, feel like a perfect landing spot for literally any good college coach, right? Anyone who has a lot of experience with developing young guys and managing a very young locker room. A first-time NHL coach who's going to have the chance to kind of grow with the team feels like a perfect fit for me.
Yeah, David Carl. Everybody thinks that they're hiring David Carl at this point, but I think that for him, I'd definitely be between like Anaheim or Chicago. I'd probably lean more so towards Anaheim just because they do have more NHL-ready young guys. But yeah, it's still a really exciting job. And even with what Cronin did to some of the young guys, again, he doesn't really impact Dostal that much, but he broke out. Jackson Lacombe, we got to give him some credit for that in terms of development. Jackson Lacombe went from like an afterthought, potentially bottom pair guy behind guys like Zellweger and Mitnikov on the left side to being a potential, not franchise, but a low-end number one defenseman, I'd say, is his potential. So it wasn't like all bad. But yeah, it's good on him. I feel like a lot of ownership groups or even management in management groups would have just saw the 21-point increase and be like, let's see what happens next year. Maybe we're playing just winning style of hockey and these guys will be bought in no time and eventually we will reach our peak. But no, Verbeek had the vision, and especially with some of the other young guys that they still have up and coming within the system. Don't want to throw Beckett Seneca into a bottom 6, 10-minute a night kind of role. You just gotta. You can't be coaching like this in 2025. And thankfully, these hard asses like Tortorella, like Cronin, are finally getting out of the game.
Yeah, it's baffling, too, how many of those types of coaches manage to find themselves on rebuilding teams.
Yeah, that's dumb.
It seems strange, right? In theory, they're the bad fit for a rebuilding team, a good fit for a competitive team. But there's probably a reason why no competitive team actually wants these guys as coaches.
Yeah, in fairness, that was just Chuck Fletcher with Tortorella, just like grasping at straws some of his final years, just being like, let me get a coach that I can sell ownership on that has had success elsewhere. But yeah, Verbeek, Cronin was a decent candidate. I believe he was coaching with the Colorado Eagles, Colorado's AHL team, and having some success. But yeah, once you started to find out the stories about this guy, you're like, what is going on? What the hell? But yeah, that is our coach and general manager talk. We are going to move on to the playoffs. I guess we'll just talk about like every single series and our thoughts early on. We're filming this Friday morning again. We're getting it out to you before games. Up first, Toronto versus Ottawa. Toronto up 3-0, 2 overtime games. And yeah, Toronto has just like gone up in these games, kind of just parked the bus. Anthony Stolarz has been great. We're looking at the block shots from game 2. They were 32-6. Like Ottawa cannot get shit in the slot. They're just pushing them outside and just been playing really good defense. Like I'm really impressed. You kind of shout on this Toronto defense core a decent amount, but they've risen to the occasion and their guys have stepped up. When looking at Toronto, they've scored 12 goals. Their guys have 5 goals, 14 assists. They're big four. Compare that to the rest of the team, 7 goals and only 6 assists. So, yeah, I got to respect this Toronto team. I knew on paper they were a better team than Ottawa. I picked Ottawa just because Toronto seems to choke, and I love Ottawa. But, yeah, this team is really built for the playoffs. On the flip side of that, Linus Ullmark's been absolute ass, 8-15 in 3 games. The first game was exceptionally bad. But even beyond that, it seems like he just isn't a playoff riser. He's only played 10 playoff games before that, but in Boston, consistently got taken in and out for Jeremy Swayman. So, yeah, if you're Ottawa, you've been in it. Your penalty kill definitely needs to be better. You've allowed 5 goals on 9 power play opportunities. But it's a nice learning experience, if that makes sense. You wish it wasn't against the Toronto Maple Leafs, but outside of that first game, game 2, game 3, they've showed up. They've showed fight.
I'll jump in on the one part that I disagree with so we can have some dialogue here. You blame Linus Ullmark and then talk about the awful penalty kill. Ullmark has been fine.
There's been some questionable calls too. I should say.
Yeah, the reffing has been questionable
that.
Here, but I don't blame Ullmark really much for this. He's been totally fine playing goalie at even strength. He's getting hammered when his team is shorthanded, which is certainly more of a defense than a goalie thing to me. It is worth saying he was constantly cycled in and out for Swayman, even when he was playing at a Vezina caliber all year in Boston. But this current Ottawa team, the defense is clearly not rising to the occasion in a way that I don't blame Ullmark at all, and I would have full faith in him going forward as your playoff goalie. That said, the rest of it is, you're right on that. Toronto's depth scoring has been there. The defense has been really, really impressive in ways that surprised me. Ottawa is playing pretty well for themselves, and it's the first playoff ride with this core. So you kind of do have to just look at this as, okay, learning experience, growth. Ottawa fans had more ambition. I mean, I think, not to get ahead of ourselves here, Montreal fans are more than happy with okay, we're playing pretty well for ourselves. This is a good learning experience. That's what it is for Ottawa too, but I assume Ottawa fans wanted more.
Battle of Ontario takes it to another level. Yeah, and the Toronto Maple Leafs tend to be chokers. For Ottawa, guys like Dylan Cousins and Fabian Zetterlund, kind of their deadline moves are kind of what's holding them back in terms of depth scoring. Those guys have really not impressed me. Besides Dutsel and Kachuk, I feel like they've not done that good of a job generating offense. The first pair has been solid. Jensen and Shabbat talking about, I feel like every one of their shots have just gotten swallowed by Leafs' legs getting blocked. They need to be better. Yeah, it stinks at this point if you're Ottawa, but win game 4 and losing 5 games, and I don't think this season is still a huge success overall. Although you lost here, you had no pressure in the series. You kind of just applied pressure because it was a battle of Ontario, not because you thought you were a serious contender and could go on a deep run.
Yeah, I think everyone actually in the organization in Ottawa is going to say, great year, successful season. We can assume that we'll be even better next year based purely on internal growth. Maybe you want to make a splash in free agency for a second real puck-moving defenseman, generate some more offense from the blue line because, as you said, that Shabbat and Jensen, I think are good players. They're worth having on your team. They add more than they subtract, but you're not going to generate any offense out of them.
Yeah, Shabbat at $8 million is not horrible, but yeah, he's probably a $6 million defenseman. We're going to move on to Montreal versus Washington, as you referenced before. Yeah, Washington's just deeper. Montreal, outside of that top line, really doesn't scare me that much. Line has been pretty invisible. Demidov, although
Line got benched in the third period.
He got benched. 2. He literally was invisible because he wasn't out there at times. But Demidov, tough spot. I still think the kid's extremely talented, but going from 2 regular season games, and he played the Chicago Blackhawks, and then he played the half-resting Carolina Hurricanes to then be elevated to the playoffs. He's definitely struggled a little bit. Logan Thompson's been great with a .951 and 3.5 goals saved to have expected. Mike Matheson has been next level horrible. That's one guy that you could just circle for Montreal being we got to move off him this summer. I remember when Montreal fans were telling me that he's a legit number 1 defenseman after he scored 62 points last year, and it was just solely because he was a power play merchant, and he was the only defenseman with a pulse on that team. Yeah, for Montreal, as we talked before, I think they all know that there were no expectations with this. They did come in hot, and Washington was injured to a degree. One of those guys are Logan Thompson, who's playing so good now. But yeah, no expectations. The top line, Lane Hutson, all playing good. That's all you really care about. Don't worry about Demidov in his 4th NHL game total that he's struggling a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I keep saying, right, when I'm skeptical of Demidov right out of the gate, that's not me being a hater. That's not me saying he's going to be bad. That's just me saying don't put such a high expectation on the guy that you're going to start freaking out if he doesn't play well in a playoff series. His 3rd game ever in North America is a playoff game against the President's Trophy winner. It's brutal.
Would have probably won the President's Trophy, but first
I'm wrong against the first seed there. Washington really did choke down the stretch. Wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's going to end up having a really nice career. If you were expecting him to score 5 goals in 7 games and win the series for Montreal, you should be more realistic with what you hope for out of literal teenagers.
But he had the Conn Smythe bonus in his contract.
As far as Washington goes, I don't think Montreal is necessarily going to test them enough for me to get a good read on, do I think Washington's a serious cup contender? What I will say is that Logan Thompson is locked in and playing really well, and that's absolutely essential, right? If Washington's going to have any hope of being a serious cup contender, they need first half Logan Thompson and not stretch run Logan Thompson. So far, they're getting that.
Yeah, he's been awesome. Protus is still working his way back, but
Ryan Leonard's been very good filling in there.
Especially on the board. I love watching him just battle on the boards. He's so good there. But Washington, you just take care of business in 5 games. Hopefully Protas gets back healthy, and then your playoffs at this point kind of like actually start against the Carolina Hurricanes. We're going to move on to Winnipeg versus St. Louis, where Winnipeg took care of the first 2 games. But then St. Louis kind of beat the shit out of them in Game 3. When looking at it in the first 2 games, I wrote this down. I talked about it a lot. Parayko and Fowler had to shut down the top line of Winnipeg, who didn't even have Velarde in the first game. I follow Scheifele and Connor, outscored opponents 3-0, and Kyle Connor and Scheifele also got involved on the power play, and I believe a shorthanded goal. So like that's why the Winnipeg Jets took the first 2 games. I don't even think Connor Hellebuyck played like that good. He just didn't have that big of a workload. And then in Game 3, St. Louis just at home said enough is enough. Hellebuyck kind of had a stinker, but more so St. Louis's top dogs, especially Buchnevich, who we've talked about before, has kind of been on a little bit of a slide in the regular season the last 2 years. Really stepped up in a big way, and especially considering Dylan DeMello's out, I feel like people don't realize how good he is. I know you're kind of lukewarm on him, but I think that he is like a top 25 purely defensive defenseman in the NHL. I think that's a big loss because now your no doubt top right-handed guy is Neil Pionk, that is not nearly as good defensively. So yeah, I think we have a series. If you told me DeMello's out the rest of the way, I think St. Louis has a real shot.
It's going to depend on matchups and coaching, I think, with how exactly you line up without DeMello. Because Pionk and Morrissey played a few shifts together and got absolutely shelled in their own end. It seems like kind of obvious from the outside that that's a horrible idea for a pair. They're not going to be able to keep the puck away from Hellebuyck, keep it out of their own net. They ran that pair last night for about 3 minutes and got absolutely hammered with it. Mm-hmm. I kind of think Winnipeg just doesn't have the depth to pull this out in a way. I'm not necessarily saying I'm going to pick St. Louis to come back and win this in 6 or 7, but it's becoming very clear that without Velarde and without Nikolai Ehlers, this is just not a very good team, not a very good forward group outside of the first line. The rest of the team should be solid. As you've said, I haven't really been impressed by Hellebuyck yet. You hope that he can be the kind of goalie to steal you a game, steal you like 2 or 3 in a series at his peak. He hasn't stolen either of the games that Winnipeg's won, and you will need to steal games in the future. Shots, you're going to have to rewrite your list of best players in the series because somehow Cam Fowler is number 1.
Yeah, he's 7 points or something.
He's been completely incredible, continuing his trend. Dare I say, if St. Louis might need to win GM of the year purely for adding 5. Cam Fowler. What an acquisition that ended up being. Every day I'm still confused how it worked out so well, but the fact that it has worked out, you can't argue it at this point.
Yeah, I think it is like we sometimes undersell it, but like first off, Anaheim just overall, Greg Cronin, as you mentioned before, bad coach, but like just the change of scenery of playing irrelevant games versus games that actually matter. Going from you're like one of the only guys your age group, 32, 33 years old, to playing with guys like Parayko and Falk that you've been battling in the NHL with for years. It does matter, and especially going from, I don't know who the hell he's playing with on the right side in Anaheim to play with Colton Parayko, one of the best defensemen in the NHL. Yeah, it's awesome seeing that on top of obviously Holloway and Broberg. Doug Armstrong has done a great job, and hopefully Alex Steen can follow up. He takes over the next season, I think, as general manager. They got the full succession plan ready to go. But yeah, as you mentioned before, when Winnipeg's missing 3 out of their best 8 players, arguably, like that's gonna hurt. It's bad right now if you're a Winnipeg Jets fan. I still would pick them to win the series, but it's dicey. If they lose game 4, I'm fully saying St. Louis is going to win this series.
Yeah, St. Louis is just deeper. They run a solid 3 lines deep at this point. Another college free agent worth shouting out is Snuggard, who's been very effective so far.
Yeah, definitely. All right, we're going to move on to Edmonton versus Los Angeles. Obviously, the big story here is Stuart Skinner stinking it up, allowing 6 goals, or the Edmonton Oilers allowed 6 goals total in both games. He's only seen 58 shots. It's not even like the LA Kings are absolutely hemming him in. He's just horrendous. And when you have, obviously, Matthias Ekholm out and you have Evan Bouchard kind of just being careless with the puck, at times coughed up 2 goals. There was obviously the 2-on-1 in his own zone that he just fully played past, didn't even attempt to play the puck. it's just really underwhelming. When looking at Kuzmenko, Kopitar, and Kempe, I need to point this out. They're outscoring opponents 3-1, and they have played McDavid, Draisaitl a decent amount and have a 70.6 expected goals percentage. They've just been awesome. Kuzmenko is, I kind of shat on the pick being like, this isn't going to get them over the hump. Not saying it is going to get them over the hump, but he's really fit in fantastic. And yeah, McDry showed up in that first game once they were down big. In game 2, they only got 1 goal out of the 2, and they were already down 3-1 midway through the second. The game was basically already over. Yeah, LA's just too deep. Said it in my prediction. I think that it's going to continue to happen. Edmonton's obviously going to win probably 2 games just because McDavid and Draisaitl aren't going to go out quiet. But I'm firmly far confident in my pick right now.
Yes, I feel super validated calling Matthias Ekholm their third most important player. That seems very obviously true now, looking at how poor they've been defensively. But it's not just poor defense, because Stuart Skinner has been the worst goalie in the playoffs by goals saved above expected.
Saved below expected.
He's been cumulative over the last 3 playoffs, the worst goalie in goals saved below expected. The one thing that impresses me about LA, which I did bring up last week, it's come true so far, is you can't just beat the Oilers by, playing well defensively and having a good structure and a good goalie. You will need at some point to outscore them. You're going to have to lean heavily on Adrian Kempe to show up and outscore them at least one of those games. And we got that game in game 1 where Adrian Kempe just purely outscored McDry. So he's been fantastic. That whole line has been fantastic. As you said, LA is really just too deep, but Kempe's offensive generation is going to be as important for them as their depth, as their defensive structure.
Yeah, and also talking about something like Edmonton had a shockingly good penalty kill on their Western Conference run last year. It was like 92% by the time they got to the Cup final. LA scored 4 out of their 8 attempts. Like, you're just not, if you can't show up in a big way, and I know losing Ekholm hurts, but that is absolutely brutal numbers. Don't expect that to continue, but if they're not at least stopping the rest of the way, 80% of LA's power play opportunities, this series is going to be over relatively soon, and John Gibson's going to be in Edmonton in no time. Okay, moving on to Dallas versus Colorado. When talking about injuries like that Winnipeg series, despite Dallas not having Robertson and Heiskanen, they're up 2-1. I think Colorado has outplayed them, but at the end of the day, Dallas has just been able to close out. Colorado's been horrendous on the power play, especially in that last game. Got a double minor with 30 seconds to go. You can't score on that. Shout out to Dallas. Shout out to Jake Ottinger for playing good. But Colorado, man, it's just infuriating, some of the things. Cale Makar has not risen to the occasion. It's been really underwhelming, and I thought this Colorado team was going to go deep. I still think that they have a good shot. If you told me that Dallas wasn't going to get Heiskanen until Game 6 and Robertson at all, I like Dallas. I like Colorado a decent amount, but it is possible that they come back sooner. Yeah, it's been good hockey, but Colorado has just left so much on the table in terms of their scoring opportunities.
Yes, so I was definitely wrong in my lead-in with thinking that Dallas's intense struggles would carry over. Jake Ottinger, a huge part of that. He's been above average, which is all you really need from him at this point. And Pete DeBoer he's the one coach who does get recycled by actual good teams for a reason.
He's a conference finals.
He's a good playoff matchup coach. They came out in game 1 looking horrible with Jamie Benn on that top line replacing Robertson. Game 2, they switch it up. Granlund's on that top line, and they've kept that top line since. That top line has been phenomenal. Rantanen, Hintz, Granlund have played really well together. Jamie Benn is more comfortable at this point in that middle 6 role. Has Dallas played amazing? No, they have led in this series for less than 2 minutes cumulatively. But I do trust that DeBoer is good at making the right little tweaks and that the team they have is deep enough, at least forward-wise, deep enough to cover Robertson. Can they cover Heiskanen? So far, Thomas Harley has. Can that keep up for a whole playoff series? I don't know. But forward-wise, this is a really deep top 9, even without Robertson. I think on the whole, I'd put their top 9 a little bit ahead of Colorado. And as you said, with Colorado, really the big issue is A, Makar's been struggling, B, Bednar's inflexibility, right? They're kind of just, we know our system, our way of playing hockey. We're just going to keep playing that way and eventually hope the results come through, which maybe they will. You can say, well, we've outplayed Dallas, and if you keep going at this for a 7-game series, the pucks will probably bounce our way and we'll probably win. But if Makar cannot be that offensive dynamo that we're used to seeing, I'm not so sure if they can get that scoring up without making some kind of a real change.
Yeah, definitely. 2 for 13 on the power play. They might have to put the lines into some kind of blender. I thought no way they were going to lose that game 3 after getting Landeskog back. That was so hype. First shift hits Mikko Rantanen. The thing with Colorado that's also concerning is like Mackenzie Blackwood's been pretty sharp in all the games. Like he has not put up a stinker. Yeah. And again, he's been good this season overall, but as we watched a lot as New Jersey kids, him kind of stink it up for New Jersey towards the end there. You might have to account for one stinker from him, and they only have 1 game left that they could potentially lose. So yeah, I'm not giving up on Colorado by any stretch because I think they have been the better team. But yeah, I think DeBoer has definitely been out coaching Jared Bednar at this point. And when a guy that you thought was the clear-cut second best player in this series by a decent margin is not playing to that level, and we're not going to dive into the whole trial thing, but the 2018 World Juniors trial is going on right now, and Kemakar is apparently being testifying in that trial. So other things might be on his mind, but we're not going to dive into that. But yeah. Colorado needs to step up. Their big dogs need to step up in a big way. And McKinnon and Makar in these next 4 games, I need at least 6 points from each of them if they're going to be making it to the second round.
Yeah, it's got to be, like you said, it's got to be changes on the offensive end and got to get the scoring up because you can't really complain about their defense not being enough to limit Dallas, right? Dallas, frankly, hasn't scored as much as their on-paper talent you'd expect. Mm-hmm. It's true, too. Blackwood's actually played really well. You can't ask Blackwood to play better than he has been. That's just not realistic for him.
Should be said, though, I think Lindgren has like a 35% expected goals percentage in this series. I got clowned on for saying that was a bad trade for them. But we're going to move on. The Carolina Hurricanes are kind of beaten down on the New Jersey Devils. Game 2 was close, but at this point, they lost Luke Hughes and Brendan Dillon. It's not looking good for New Jersey. I don't think we're going to have to spend too much time on this. Freddie Anderson has stepped up in a big way, stopping 48 at 50 after being pretty below average in the regular season with an 899. Yeah, I've liked what I've seen from Carolina. Stankoven scoring 2 goals. They're probably going to take care of it in 5 games. I said it was going to go 7, but definitely after these injuries. Markstrom has played good, too. That's kind of the sad part. They just don't have the offensive firepower to get it done.
Yeah, I call a sweep early. I still feel good about a sweep. I feel good about calling the Devils the team I'd most want to play against in the playoffs. I think realistically their season was over the night Jack Hughes got hurt.
Definitely, yeah.
This team is just incapable of creating offense. They can't do it. You know, the first game was a blowout because Carolina created offense and the Devils didn't. The second game was close because Carolina couldn't create as much offense and Markstrom played really well, but it was still true that the Devils could not create anything. I don't see any path for them to score like 3 goals in the same game on this Carolina team, which makes it really hard. And again, as you've said, it's so difficult when you end up losing games that your goalie is playing really well in. It makes things so difficult because number one, it means that, you know, it's entirely on the offense to step up. I don't think the Devils' offensive personnel is good enough to do that. Timo Meier's been awful this series. He has
blew
been
a potential game-winning goal at the end of
it's
not game time.
Right over his stick, just hideous work from Timo Meier on that one play. But as I've said, really at no point in New Jersey has Timo Meier been a first-line player. Yeah. They sent out a trade package like he was a first-line player. They gave him an extension like he was a first-line player, and he has not played to that level at all. But really the issue is Markstrom like consistent enough that you're going to get this goaltending every single time out? He's probably not, right? You're probably already seeing the best game that Markstrom is going to give you in game 2, and you're wasting it. Maybe he can play at this level for a whole 7-game series. Maybe you're going to have your offense finally turn it on just in time for Markstrom to lose a game for you.
Yeah, and I think game 2 in a weird way was kind of like their game 7, or they were down 3-0 basically. They had to get that if they wanted any chance with the injuries coming off because these guys are now playing huge minutes. But yeah, it's not looking good. Timo Meyer is not stepping up. Dawson Mercer isn't enough.
Not stepping up. And I also want to say, Dougie Hamilton, some of the players have came back in these playoffs from injuries and looked 100% healthy and fantastic. Dougie Hamilton is back. He's on the ice. He's playing the minutes. He exists, but he is clearly not 100% Dougie Hamilton.
He's a guy that actually got hurt and actually needed as much time as possible to rest up. Speaking of guys that got hurt and then came back, we're moving on to the Florida Panthers versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. Game 1, very good defensive effort by Florida and Bobrovsky, but it was just like a Vasilevsky stinker, if we're going to be honest. 6 goals on 17 shots total. Matthew Tkachuk comes back and looks like his absolute best with 3 or 4 points. Game 2 was just defensive shutdown by the Florida Panthers. Just absolutely blocked the middle of the ice. Guys like Gensel, Point, Hagel, Cirelli couldn't really get any good looks off and I just got to say, like, at some point, their top guys got to step up in a big way, and that has not happened in this series. Yeah, Florida, even though they don't have Aaron Ekblad, has just been so stout defensively. I guess I doubted this defense score, which is stupid because they were great last year, great 2 years ago. Bobrovsky's been good, but I don't even think he's been challenged that much, if I'm going to be honest. And yeah, at this point, you can't count out Tampa, and especially if Barkov's out for a prolonged period of time. That was a dirty hit on Hagel, no doubt, even though I bet him at Conn Smythe 260-1. That was a dirty hit. Maybe not a suspension or anything. Maybe not even 5 minutes, but definitely. I saw people saying that it was like clean. Like, come on, he wasn't even controlling the puck. But, yeah, for Florida, man, Paul Maurice is a damn good coach. Their players, although they don't have the best defense core, they have probably the best defensive forward core, and that has been on full display in terms of them just stifling Tampa Bay in transition and not really being able for them to set up anything in the middle of the ice.
Do want to say Tampa's best chance in the game last night came literally 40 seconds into the game. Braden Point had an open net to shoot at and missed it. They did not get another chance that good the entire rest of the game. That's like literally the absolute peak of you need your stars to step up.
Yeah.
Braden Point should be able to bury that shot. If he does, we might be having a different conversation about a tied series right now. Tampa's power play, just 1 of 8 in this series. That's entirely on, this power play was over 25% in the regular season. It's on paper one of the best power plays in the league. There's no reason why a Kucherov, Point, Hagel, Gensel power play should not be outstanding, and they're just not. And really, it seems like the shallowest analysis might be right here, that the Panthers are doing, the Panthers thing of being pesky and obnoxious and annoying to play against. Just the amount of after ice scrums over nothing, the amount of times that guys like Kucherov, like Brandon Hagel look just distraught out there, look frustrated with the Panthers' aggressiveness and physicality, and taking dumb penalties on their own then out of retaliation. That Hagel hit is dirty. The puck was nowhere near that play. But, it's not like the Panthers are being unreasonably dirty in the sense that the refs are correctly calling penalties on them. It's on you to take advantage of that, right? If the Panthers are going to give you 4 power plays a game by being annoying and physical and obnoxious to play against, and you have one of the best power plays in the league, that's on you at that point. That's on your power play to score goals. Tampa's not doing that. If they don't fix that, they're not going to win the series.
Yeah. I really don't want to boil it down to something simple, but your star offensive players just have to step up. I know that Sam Reinhart's great defensively, Barkov's great defensively, but you have a line of Point, Kucherov, and Gensel. You have Hagel, Cirelli. You got to step up. And it's a really tough break that Bjorkstrand's obviously hurt. He was expected to be a huge depth piece on this team, but with the way that they've looked, they're not a Bjorkstrand. Maybe he scores a goal in that game too and they get it to overtime or something like that. But if your big dogs don't show up, it's just not going to happen. And in that game 1, everybody on Florida was eaten to a solid degree. So yeah, for a team like Tampa Bay, I just didn't expect this. Vasilevsky has been so good in the playoffs. Their stars always seem to rise to the occasion. It just not happened. Last year, yes, they did kind of get dominated by Florida, but you expected them to really bring it this year with the new squad. Not a new squad, but like a different squad. And it just hasn't happened. They're definitely not out of it. But it's not good. And home ice, I don't think, is as big of a thing, especially in this series where they're just 4 hours away. But yeah, I'm not feeling too confident in my Stanley Cup pick.
No, it's all of Tampa's
You picked them too, right? Yeah.
I did, yeah. All of Tampa's problems are fixable at this point, but they're running out of time to fix them very fast.
But yeah, but it's not even like they have this big talent advantage to begin with the
Yeah.
Florida Panthers. And part of my reasoning was Aaron Ekblad out the first 2 games. They win both of those games. Yeah, if you're a Florida fan, you're absolutely elated. And again, I'm not just trying to say that, again, Tampa Bay's, they're on the same level, but I just expected so much more from Tampa Bay. We're going to finish on a positive note. I picked the Minnesota Wild to beat the Vegas Golden Knights, and now they are up 2-1. Kaprizov and Boldy is just such a special duo. And when you look on the flip side of that, Mark Stone and Jack Eichel, goose eggs in the first 3 games. Not to, again, oversimplify it, but I think that is a big, big reason why. 7 and 6 points from Boldy. When their line has been together, they've been damn good. And Aiden Hill, again, great in 2023, 2024. Got pulled at times for Logan Thompson. 8.25 in the first 3 games. I thought Vegas was very good in that first game, but since then, it's kind of all been Minnesota in a pivotal game 4 at home for them to potentially go up 3-1. Definitely not saying that Vegas is out of it. But if you're a Minnesota Wild fan, you got to be pretty elated. Spurgeon and Brodin have definitely answered the call. Boyum, after that first game where he had that costly turnover that basically ended the game, has been much better, got his first point. Yeah, I just feel like Gustafsson is obviously far out playing Aiden Hill. I'm feeling damn good for good reason.
This series is the toughest read for me so far because Kirill Kaprizov has clearly been the best player in the playoffs, which tracks because he was the best player in the league until he got hurt, right? Up until the point he got hurt, we were both in agreement he was the MVP of the league. Kaprizov has been completely incredible this series. Vegas has no answer for how to stop him. The problem is, I genuinely do still think Vegas is the better team. Minnesota managed to win 2 games 5-2, where they got outplayed with Kaprizov off the ice. Vegas won the XG battle and was tied in actual goals with Kaprizov off the ice. The problem is, if Kaprizov's line is going to create 2 goals a game at even strength, and Kaprizov's going to get a power play point or 2 per game, that's a whole lot of goal scoring that you need to catch up with. Can Vegas outscore Kaprizov? Maybe. Can they shut down that Kaprizov-Ek-Boldy line? It's not looking too good right now. I kind of doubt it. They do need much more production out of Eichel and out of Stone. But, frankly, has Vegas played badly? I don't think so. I haven't seen one single thing from Minnesota when Kaprizov's been off the ice that makes me think, oh, this is a scary, dangerous team that can go on a run. They're going purely as far as Kaprizov takes them in the same way that, like, last year's Oilers went purely as far as McDry took them.
Yeah, it's like when Ryan Hartman, I like Marco Rossi, but even Zuccarello, like when those guys are out there, Gustav Nyquist, I'm like, okay, just keep possession in the offensive zone. If you're in the defensive zone, just chip it out, get some changes in. Get Kaprizov and Boldy out there.
I mean, Rossi and Zuccarello are good players, but they've literally been outplayed in this series.
Yeah, I feel like Eric Sinek has also been fantastic. How active his stick is. And when he's in the defensive zone against Vegas has been so crucial to this series. Maybe he hasn't been lighting it up as much offensively as the other two, but I think he's arguably been as important as Matthew Boldy. Yeah, it's just stars rising to the occasion where Vegas has fallen.
And it's true that I've always been an Aiden Hill skeptic. I said it when he signed the contract extension. He's a fine goalie. He's not a bad goalie. He's not really a good one either, though. He's a game manager. He's a system goalie. He is really not the kind of guy who's going to steal games for you. And when you're playing against one of the scariest offensive talents in the league, you maybe need a goalie who can steal games for you. Either that or Vegas's very talented defensive core really needs to step up and figure out how to limit Kaprizov.
Yeah, we've talked about it before. I love their 3-headed monster, but it's definitely more of an offensive threat. And when Philip Gustafsson's on his game like he has been, and as we talked about before, Minnesota's defense core is the opposite. It's a lot of defensive defensemen outside of Boyum. Yeah, it's been really impressive from Minnesota, but as you said before, this isn't a case like maybe some other series that are 2-1. It's still up for grabs, and it could easily go either way.
I fully see this going 6 or 7 regardless of who wins. There is no way that Vegas is done, but I also wouldn't call Minnesota's wins a fluke at this point.
Yeah, no. The second game was like not fluky start, but like 3 goals in the first period. Like that was just absolutely crazy. But yeah, that is our playoff recap. We'll be back next week with some kind of. Actually, we're not even done yet.
We're not.
Cole Hutson. I was lucky enough to be joined by him. But yeah, thank you for watching. Now we're going to take you to that interview. What is going on, guys? Welcome to the first interview of the In the Box podcast. And I am happy to be joined by Boston University defenseman in the 43rd overall pick in the 2024 NHL draft by the Washington Capitals, Cole Hutson. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, big season by this guy this season. A lot of highlights. We're gonna go through all of it and just talk some hockey when looking at the season that he had. Up first, what do you think was the biggest like adjustment for you going from the USHL, going from the US developmental program to college hockey? What do you think you took a little bit of a while to kind of adjust to?
Yeah, I think just about everybody knows I didn't have the start I wanted. It was a pretty big adjustment, big jump. Everyone's bigger, older, stronger, faster, all those ideal things. And I think the hardest thing was just being more mature with the puck and making better decisions. I think I got it better as the year went on. But to start with, it's pretty much like playoff hockey all the time in college.
Mm-hmm.
You only play like 40-ish games, so you can't afford to lose many. So yeah, I think just being mature with your decisions and yeah, I think got better as the year went on for sure.
Yeah, I could imagine going from the USHL, still a respected league, but playing like the Muskegon Lumberjacks to Boston College or all those Hockey East teams is definitely a little bit of an adjustment.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
For regarding Boston University, was it just always Boston University because your brothers went there, or did you at least like test the waters, take some other visits to other colleges, or was it just once the Boston University offer came across, it was sign where?
Yeah. I think a few other schools were interested, but I think I was kind of stuck on BU the whole time. I went on a few visits to other schools, and I think just BU had them beat, regardless if my brothers or went. But yeah, I mean, definitely really had no say, was going regardless if I liked it or not.
Yeah, I love that. Following the family. What would you say was your favorite moment of this season? Obviously, were some highlights: winning World Juniors, winning the Bean Pot, making the Frozen Four. If you were to choose just one, what was the highlight of your season, or maybe was it something else?
Um, I don't know. I think they're all right up there. I think winning regionals was pretty cool to make it to the Frozen Four because it's something we worked to all year, and obviously it didn't end the way we would like, but it happens. I think the World Juniors gold medal was obviously one of the coolest parts of my year, and just a cool little accolade to add on to my persona, kind of.
Yeah, it was a great overall season. And when talking about what you learned this year at Boston University, what is maybe one lesson that you think you learned throughout the season that you could probably apply to next season and maybe get over that hump and potentially bring home a national championship?
Yeah, I think just leaving it all out there. Not saying we didn't leave it all out there this time, but I think from the moment we're training in the summer, how hard we really work and uh, just pushing ourselves every day all the way to the end. It's a long season, and uh, at the end, the team that wants it the most wins it. So I think I'm not going to say we didn't leave it all on the table, but there were areas we definitely need to be better and to win next year.
Yeah, and it seems like you guys are bringing back a lot of guys as well as adding some transfers. So should be a very exciting season in terms of you guys potentially being a national championship favorite. Uh, what do you think is one area overall on the team that could maybe improve a little bit to get over the hump?
Yeah, I don't know. It's all little things. I think minor details. Obviously, halfway through the year, we had a goalie change, and Michael Yegorov came in, won some big games for us, and I think just with him having that experience going into next year, to a year that he was supposed to be coming in, just having that experience is going to
Mhm.
help us a lot. I think we have a lot of transfers coming in that played at big name schools, and um, obviously really good players too. And I think we're gonna have a deeper lineup next year, and it'll definitely be good for us.
Yeah, excited, especially with like the CHL guys maybe coming over, see if
Yeah.
Boston University. I know you can't say anything or if you know anything, but yeah, that's definitely another layer that's going to come into play, and I'm excited for that. Moving on more so to you getting drafted by the Washington Capitals, you go in the second round, kind of similarly to your brother. Definitely had the stats and the offensive ability to be a first round pick. Does that at all fuel you that you fell to the second round, or because you went to such a great developmental spot like the Washington Capitals? Do you really not care? Do you just think it's like for the best?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, I think obviously I wanted to go in the first round. It's everybody's dream to get drafted in the first round, and uh, maybe I wasn't good enough in a lot of people's eyes to go in the first round, or big enough, or strong enough, etc. And I know my brother felt the same way. He's uh, playing super well in the NHL right now,
Yeah, yeah, I think you could
um,
say that. Yeah.
and yeah, I mean he's earned every bit of it, and I think our whole lives we've just tried to prove people wrong, and uh, I know a good way for us to look at it is 30 teams skipped over both of us, and we got a bunch of people to prove wrong. So hopefully we can do it.
Yeah, yeah, I think definitely based on what you guys have done amazingly in your freshman year and then him later on in the NHL. I think a lot of teams are probably kicking themselves regarding the Washington Capitals. What is one player outside of Ovechkin? Because I feel like that's the obvious answer that you're really looking forward to playing with potentially at the end of next season or the start of the 2026-2027 season. Is there one guy that you're like, I think we could have some real chemistry and make some magic happen?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know if there's one player. I think there's a few. I think Tom Wilson, just getting a chance to play with him would be pretty cool. I think obviously he's a big guy, he's a fighter, and someone you need on a team for a guy like me that's not as big. And someone tries to kill me, he'll be the first guy to step in. But yeah, I think him, and then another guy who I'd just love to learn from is John Carlson. Obviously, he's been in the league for a lot of years, and I think just if I got the chance to play with him, I'd pick his brain on his knowledge of the game, and learn from him as much as I can. And um, not sure how much longer he's going to be playing, but in the last few years that he'll be there.
Yeah, potential successor to him on the top power play. You definitely could have learned a lot from him. Regarding also Capitals and going back a little bit to college, how was it? How was it facing off against Ryan Leonard? Because obviously you have this Boston University, Boston College beef, but probably like the next decade, decade and a half, hopefully you're going to be playing on the same team. So when you guys were doing those wars at the college level, were you guys just kind of like grinning and being like, yeah, I don't exactly hate you, but I got to hate you tonight?
Yeah, I mean, whenever we're not on the same team, I'd say we aren't friends at all. Off the ice, best friends, but on the ice, people wouldn't think we're friends. So it's one of those things. We battle hard. I know what he wants, and he knows what I want, and we both want to win. So we're gonna help our team as much as we can to do that. And whether I gotta take an open ice hit or dish one on him, I'll do it to help the team win.
Yeah, I think Capitals fans are salivating at the potential of you guys at the next level in 2 to 3 years together. A little bit of a biased question here as an Islanders fan. I got to talk about my guy Cole Iserman. What, in your opinion, outside of the great shot, just makes him such a good goal scorer? And how do you guys have this amazing chemistry?
I think a more majority of it is how much he loves to score. I think I don't think there's a guy probably in the world that loves to score as much as this kid. I think you see it in his passion, and even in his celebrations. I think he's one of a kind, and obviously gifted talent with the shot. And I think just how much he strives to get better, and how much he loves the game, and while he's doing it is pretty cool.
Yeah, him at the World Juniors celebrated that goal going over to Canada's bench was absolutely electric, and I can't wait to root for my Islanders one day. Another slightly biased question: I saw that you played for the North Jersey Avalanche from 2020 to 2022. I'm from New Jersey. What was your favorite part about playing and I assume living in the best state in the United States?
Yeah, probably one of the coolest experiences of my life. A guy by the name of Larry Robbins took me into his billet house, and he housed, I think it was like 10 kids on my team. And uh, yeah, I mean, it was one of the best things for my career. couldn't be here without him and all the coaches who helped me along the way. So I still text all those coaches that coached me over there. Pretty much some of my best friends, and I was texting one of them yesterday, and he moved down to Florida with Larry, and gonna go visit them in the summer and train with them and all that stuff. So yeah, definitely best friends for life.
Yeah, that's absolutely love to see it. And then we'll finish on this. I have to ask you this. I'm sure you've been asked this multiple times. Capitals versus Canadians. Who are you rooting for in this first round matchup? Brother versus team that drafts you. Feel free to give like a PR answer of just you hope both teams stay healthy and have fun. But do you have an answer with that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'll be cheering for. I mean, I'm gonna be sitting in lane seats, so
Mm,
I'll probably be up on my feet when both teams score. To be honest, I think obviously I'll cheer for Lane a bit more than Capitals, but
mm.
um, hopefully I'll be in the Capital seat in a few years. And um, when it comes playoff time, if we ever play the Canadians again, I hope both my parents are rooting for me, and um, I think we'll take them down for sure.
Yeah, they'll have like the Donna Kelsey split jersey,
Yeah,
Capitals, Canadians. But yeah, man, thank you so much for hopping on this. Greatly appreciate it. Best of luck with next season. Rooting for Boston University.
yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, appreciate it. Go USA. 50th World Juniors. Excited for you guys to potentially bring it home.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks again. See ya.